investing in this sector. And just about 2 weeks ago, we heard President John Mahama say that the government was committed to clearing the over $3 billion energy sector legacy debt, like it's popularly called. And we also do know that the Energy Ministry has also been working round the clock to ensure that it's able to revitalize this power sector and make it easy for the various sectors of the economy, because the argument is that as we deal with the problems in this sector, we would see prosperity across sectors of the economy as well, and also how to ensure that we are able to sustain whichever progress that will be made as a result of efforts that are put in place. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice, and tonight we want to look at revitalizing the power sector, whether once again is another rhetoric or perhaps talk shop as regards what has been said so far and what we really need to look at in terms of real-time solutions to dealing with the problem so that the country move forward. I do have on the panel with me Dr. Elvis Chumesi. He's Director of Research and Innovation, Africa Sustainable Energy Sector, ASEC. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I have on my right hand Kwame Jantua. He's Chairman Energy Sector with the Association of Ghana Industries. Good evening to you, sir, as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for asking. We have our video call with us, Mr. Jabesh and Mr. Arthur. He's Managing Partner, Arthur Energy Africa. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you as well for joining us on Agenda tonight.
It's a pleasure to be able to join you. Thanks.
Of course, we do have as well the Public Relations Officer of the Energy Ministry, Richmond Roxing. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you as well for joining us via video call.
Good evening, Beatrice, and thank you for having me.
Of course, last but not the least, we have Dr. Elikplim Kwablan Akpetogo. He is the CEO of the Independent Power Producers. Good evening to you, sir. We're grateful you're able to join us this evening on Agenda tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
I want to start with you, Mr. Arthur, and just be straight as regards whether or not the energy sector is still in crisis, because people are still having light out.
Well, I wouldn't call it a crisis, but yes, there are improvements that can be made and that should be made. And I personally, as a consumer, I want to see certain improvements made.
So you wouldn't call it crisis. What would you call it where we are now?
Well, the sector has challenges, and the service that it delivers to me can be better. And that is the fact of the matter. And we have to work towards improving that performance. We are all consumers of electricity and grid power. My lights go off as often as everybody else's. Sometimes I have a face off, I have a voltage off, and so on. I encounter the same problems, and I understand it that we need to get this thing working properly for everybody else to be able to rely on it and be productive.
Mr. Jantua, how would you assess where we are currently?
Good evening to our viewers. Where we are with the energy sector?
Yes. Are you satisfied with our power issue?
Talking about power.
Yes.
Talking about power. It has been a challenge, at least in this Fourth Republic. It isn't new to anybody in Ghana with regards to the challenges that have faced the power sector. But we have to be able to sort it. There's a question of debt, there's a question of feedstock, there's a question of ECG. There's the question of the interrelation between the different sectors, GridCo, VRA, ECG, how they interact and how they work, Ghana Gas. And the debt that strews between the lot has created some of the challenges that we face. But bear in mind, one of the major challenges that we face is the fact that we haven't been able to do exploration to production in the last 8 years. Why do I say that? Gas. We decided that gas was going to be a main feedstock for electricity. Hence, we have a gas plant. And so the plan was that we drill, we get gas, we don't sell our gas, it goes into electricity. The fact that we haven't been able to provide the kind of gas that would help power electricity, we've had to now resort back to fuel. Fuel means money. We need to find the money to buy the fuel to do what? To fire our generators for electricity. And so you can see the cocktail of issues. And then what has even made it worse is political interference with some of these areas. So,
are we still having that issue with political interference?
Well, we might not be having it, but it has a lasting effect. Some of the decisions that were taken has a lasting effect in going forward. So I believe we all, and for me, one of the major factors is the people of Ghana. They have a huge role to play. Because if the people of Ghana, if some people were not trying to pilfer electricity, were not trying to mishandle meters, were not trying to do their own thing, perhaps that debt would have come down. So we also have a responsibility. I don't think the responsibility is only on the parastatals that look after electricity, on government, but we also have a role to play. And if we don't play that role, then it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to cut down the cost going forward. It is key.
So, Isami, what you're saying is that you're equally not too satisfied with where we are in terms of how much power we have or how we are even enjoying it, as it were.
Who is satisfied? Say, we have constant power for a while, as we saw in the MPP government for a while, then all of a sudden, it starts going haywire again. Would you be happy? It takes us back. It takes us back into an area that we don't want to go into. We want a situation where there is constant power through and through. With that, it now brings the other generation mixes into focus. What are we doing there? What is happening there? How have we demarcated it? I always say, and I always believe, that we need a 20-year plan for energy alone. Why? It is the bedrock of industry. And it is the bedrock of a country. So I think it's important that we look at that side.
We'll get into that. I want to come to you, Dr. Elikplim Ametogbo, because I know that even prior to the 2024 general election, one of the main things that came up from the IPPs was the debt owed you, and the fact that if there was no effort from the government to clear that debt, we're going to see our lights out. Would you say that you're okay with where we are? Perhaps conversations regarding how much you're owed and what is being done about it? We can see you, but we cannot hear you. I guess you're muted. If you can kindly unmute yourself.
That is good. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
Right. The issues about debt is one of the critical concerns for the sector. As at the end of last year, a lot happened, and I believe you are well informed about it. There was a case where some producers, IPPs for that matter, shut down their plant because it became obviously impossible for them to continue the operation after several engagements, and nothing came out of it. We have a new government. We are well aware that they have inherited multifaceted crises, and for that matter, we have to allow them time to find a lasting solution to the issues, especially with the debt, even though it continues to grow. So we are faced with a very difficult situation as we speak, but we must cooperate with the new government to find a solution.
Okay, let me just get clarity. When you say we must cooperate with the new government, we shouldn't see IPPs threatening any moment that, well, we haven't heard anything from you, so get ready, we're going to shut down our plant. We shouldn't expect that at all.
Exactly. The government has shown good faith by engaging us, promising that they are deliberating on finding a lasting solution. You remember, His Excellency the President announced that getting close, by end of this year, he should be able to clear the sector debt. That is motivating enough. So we must allow them time to find a solution.
Well, fortunately, we have Richmond Roxon via video call with us. I'm sure he'll give us some details as regards the roadmap towards clearing the energy sector debt. The president will say clearing the slates or making it clean. But I want to get your preliminary thoughts, Dr. Elvis Chumesi, Director of Research and Innovation, Africa Sustainable Energy Sector. Center, where we are right now, having listened to, Mr. Jantua, you just heard Mr. Metogbo there, as well as Dr. Elik Blim. What's your own assessment before I get that of Mr. Roxon?
Okay, thank you very much. For me, I would consider the energy sector issues as the biggest issue in Ghana that we have now, because with over 80 billion Ghana cedis debt in the energy sector, that is very huge. I don't know of any sector that is having such debt. So the energy sector is one of the places that we need critical attention. And I believe that these are some things that we've reiterated over the years, and the problem keep happening. And I believe that this is the time for us to take drastic measures to make sure that we solve this canker that we have in the country. Because as it stands now, we have a lot of debt. And aside all these things, the people of Ghana are always suffering. Lives are going off, which we don't have in other countries when you go. One thing I always say is that electricity is like a basic need now. If I would say Abraham Maslow is supposed to formulate his new theory on basic needs, food, clothing, I think energy or electricity would have been one of the basic needs that we have now. But it's like we are being denied our right of electricity even in the country just because of debt and inefficiencies in the system. And I believe that it's time for us to take drastic measures in solving them.
It's time to take drastic measures in solving them. And of course, we'll be delving into some of the proposals that have come up and really what we need to do to be able to implement them to make this sector better. I'm coming to you, Mr. Richmond Roxon. You speak for the Energy Ministry. And I was saying earlier that we heard the president about 2 weeks ago really confidently saying that by 2026, we should see that over 3 billion, people say, energy sector bill, or what you call the legacy debt, as it were, cleared. Do you have an idea what roadmap the government has towards dealing with this?
Good evening to you, Beatrice. Good evening to fellow panelists. And then good evening to your cherished viewers. Currently, I'll describe the power sector. You mentioned energy, but I will narrow it down to the power sector as the biggest economic and fiscal risk that currently we face as a country. If you asked earlier whether the sector is in crisis, it's a very challenged sector, and the data will show. If you have a sector with a debt of about $3.1 billion, that's what this government inherited in January 2025. If you have a sector that is spending over $1.1 billion on liquid fuels alone, if you have a sector that you have the distributor having a deficit of averagely about 2 billion Ghana cedis each month, if you have a sector where independent power players or producers are owed $1.7 billion, that's over $1.7 billion, definitely you describe it as a sector that is very challenging. And that is why His Excellency the President and the Ministry has given it critical attention or special attention to ensure that whatever problems are there, largely which has to do with finance, is dealt with. In 2015, when John Mahama was President, JM1, as the first administration, we had some of these challenges. We had serious generation capacity issues. It was improved drastically. We got to a point where we had excess capacity. ESLA was introduced at a time to deal with the debt that had ridden the sector. Unfortunately, we all know how ESLA was mismanaged. Beyond directing the monies to something else, it was collateralized, and then also eventually bonds were issued. And then during the DDEP, we had all the challenges associated with it. So yes, the sector is a very challenging one, but the managers of the sector are more than capable of dealing with the issues and are committed to giving it a clean bill of health in the next couple of months.
You haven't answered the question as to the roadmap towards clearing the legacy debt. Like we heard the president say, we need to have a clean slate. What is the roadmap? What's the plan? Do you have an idea?
Yes, so what's the first thing is to bring efficiency to the sector. If you look at the challenges that we've had, the major headache would have to be one, the fuels that the liquid fuels that we purchase, and then the second will have to be ECG. If you take the fuels, what it is that the fuels that currently government we purchase to power these thermal plants are not part of the tariff structure. So every now and then, government itself has to find money. We always have to call on Ministry of Finance to be able to raise the required amount to finance the purchasing of liquid fuels. If you look at 2024 alone, the government spent $1.1 billion.
And I'm understanding that this year alone, from January till now, you spent about $1.2+ billion on just getting both gas and liquid fuel as well to power the thermal plants. Is that right?
That is true, and that's a major headache, because if you have a tariff structure that does not take into consideration the cost of fuels, it means that every now and then government will have to find the money. Well, this is not sustainable, and that is why government is looking at having sustainable funding when it comes to the fuel issues.
So that's why I asked you the question, because the president has already given a deadline. He says by 2026. So you are enumerating the problems to us, and I'm asking you, yes, you want to make the ECG efficient. You want to make the electricity company of Ghana efficient. And then you're talking about how much we're spending on fuel alone just to power our thermal plants. So I'm just asking, aside from making ECG efficient, and I'll be glad if you're even able to break it down for us, how you mean by making ECG efficient within the time frame the president has set for the government.
Yes, Beatrice, if you had allowed me, I would have responded to that. I was coming to dealing with the fuel issue, which is one of the biggest headaches. If that is why this evening or today, the Finance Ministry, the government has introduced the Energy Sector Levies Amendment Bill 2025 to be able to address that challenge, because that is a major bill when it comes to finance. It has a very deep fiscal impact on our finances. So the bill that has been introduced today is to ensure that, one, we have a dedicated fund for the power sector. For the power sector, one part of it will go into dealing with the debts that has accrued over the period. A portion will also go into investment. Part will also go into dealing with the fuel challenges that we have. And this is also part of the roadmap in dealing with it. Because of the introduction of this bill, that's why His Excellency was very confident that in the next few months we'll be able to deal with the debt, because now we're looking at sustainable funding to be able to deal with this major challenge of the sector. The second thing has to do with ECG. When it comes to dealing with the efficiencies of ECG, no company will be able to survive when you have an aggregate technical and commercial loss of about 40%. No company in the world will be able to survive. So the first thing that the government is looking at is to bring efficiency to ECG's operations. The first thing is that the government has said that when it comes to MDs, all MDs should be able to pay for the electricity that they consume. The only thing that has happened is that you have some institutions that will be on prepayment, and you have others that will be on post-payment. But the underlying point is that all MDs, every ministry, department, or agency by government is going to pay for electricity that they consume. Once that is done, it means that ECG's revenue collection will improve drastically.
Effective when?
Once ECG...
Forgive me, I'll let you continue.
It's immediate. It's immediate. In fact, the directive has gone to ECG already that they should go around and do the installation and also recover all monies owed by all persons, including government institutions that have not paid. And we use Ghana Water as an example, that one institution cannot be owing ECG that is almost getting to a billion cedis. It's unsustainable.
So perhaps in the
But
next few days, we should be seeing, for instance, ECG disconnecting some of these public institutions like we saw last year because they owed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The directive has gone to ECG already. This is a cabinet decision chaired by the president himself, and then it is being supervised by the ministry. The directive has gone to ECG and NEDCO already. So we're expecting that once that is done, the revenues by due ECG and NEDCO should improve. Once they also improve with their collections, you will now have enough money to be able to pay for power that has been procured. You have money to be able to deal with some of the challenges when it comes to the IPP debt. You have more money to spread across when it comes to cash waterfall mechanisms. Because one thing that we've noticed is that, yes, the IPPs are owed, but mostly if the cash waterfall mechanism is fair and they make some money every month, they're able to work and they're able to give you some breathing space for government to also restructure. And that is one of the measures that the government is doing to improve collection as well. And like I mentioned earlier, beyond improving collection, technical and commercial loss, technical losses are being looked at. You have a number of areas that have transformer issues. All those things eventually will go into loss of power because you have power producing, you are producing the power, you are generating the power is being supplied, but it is not going to the intended recipient because of some of these challenges that we have.
So when you
Once
talk
there are
about
improvements,
when you talk about transformer issues, are you replacing the transformers?
yes, I mean, the last week, ECG has been given approval to acquire 200 transformers from Ghana.
What about
and
the
then
obsolete?
roll them out.
The obsolete transmission lines as well?
They are all included. Like I said, it's a comprehensive plan. So if you let me land, then I'll be able to move to the next. Otherwise, if you interrupt with me, it will be difficult to put it across. ECG has been given them the authorization to replace over 200 transformers within the period. And that will definitely go ahead to help with the outages that we've been experiencing over the period, and also help to reduce the technical losses that ECG has experienced within the period. Aside that, when it comes to the distribution side, the government has put in place a number of measures. When it comes to revenue collection as well, don't forget PSP has been introduced by government. It's also been approved by government. When I say PSP, I mean private sector participation in ECG. The government does not intend to sell ECG, no. The government intends to introduce private sector participation through concessions to make sure that the billing and collection is improved. With all these measures in place, definitely the financing or the fiscal space will be better, it will improve, and at the end of the day, these debts will be able to be dealt with. Beyond that, when it comes to...
And if you could be wrapping up for us, because I need to give opportunity to other people to talk as well and for us to advance the conversation, sir.
Let me make this last point. Beyond that, if you look at the liquid fuels that we purchase as a country, government is constructing a new gas processing plant, because if you look at the ratio between liquid fuels and then natural gas, it's almost half the cost. So last year we spent 1.1 billion. If we're doing natural gas with that same on liquid fuels, we're doing natural gas, we'd have spent maybe 500 or 600 million. And that will also go into the financing, and then it will give the government some breathing space. All those balances are monies that can be channeled into investment or into paying some of these debts that we've seen. Overall, it has to do with the policy intervention and improving efficiency. Once that is done, definitely we should be able to deal with the debt within the period that His Excellency the President has set.
And we are going to be hearing Dr. Kasiel Atufos, the Finance Minister, very shortly, exactly what he said on the floor of Parliament just some hours ago. But let me ask you this quick question for clarity. You talk about the investment into our transformers as well as transmission lines, not just to reduce, the technical losses, but also improve the quality of electricity we get in our homes. What time period do we have to ensure, for us to see a reflection of this in our homes? How soon?
Beatrice, if you observe, in May, in fact, the first 4 months were very challenging. But in May, the grade has fairly stabilized. I mean, the complaints, because we also monitor the calls, the complaints from people. And in May, we noticed that there's been significant improvement. In fact, if you check with ECG, for 2 years, they were not doing any major maintenance. And this is a fact. And if you check the data from GridCo, in December 2024 alone, the load shedding was over 700 megawatts. That is not what we've seen now. It's been vast improvement over the period. This is because the measures are being implemented immediately and as we move on. So every now and then, the sector players, the stakeholders are engaging, measures are being put in place to make sure that the service that we enjoy or the consumers enjoy improve. So if you ask timelines, it's already in motion. It's already in motion. That's why we are seeing some improvement. We are very confident that moving forward for next month, next 2 months, definitely our supply will be better. The goal is to have reliable, sustainable power supply at a cheaper cost for the people of Ghana.
In the next 2 months, we should see improvements. We shouldn't see any light outs in our communities. Again, just very briefly, you gave us the...
No, Beatrice, let me clarify. Our generation capacity today, the demand and supply, if you check the data, we have not been shedding load. So ordinarily, we shouldn't be experiencing any outages in our home. So
currently, we are not shedding load.
No,
we are not shedding any load.
No.
So if the data, forgive me. So the light outs people have been experiencing have been due to these transformers and the transmission lines and the other technical challenges you talked about earlier.
Exactly. That's why I said that we are not shedding load. The generation is sufficient to deal with our demand. The challenges that we are having now has to do with the distribution lines, the distribution system. And that is why there's been improvements over the period. And people will testify that there are people that they call to complain. Immediately ECG when they fix the problem, and they haven't experienced that, or the lights out has been very minimal. It has nothing to do with our generation capacity. And with the maintenance ongoing, definitely, at a point in time, we should see a total stop to the problem.
And that's what you said in the next 2 months.
No, I didn't say the next 2 months. I said we've started it. It's ongoing. This month has been significant. We've seen significant improvement, and we'll continue to see it each day because of the work that is ongoing.
I want us to watch Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, the finance minister, today as he tried to defend why the government is bringing in a new levy, which we're told is supposed to put about 1 Ghana cedi on every litre of fuel you buy. Watch this.
To help raise additional revenue to fund the needs in the power sector, government is proposing an increase in export price of petrol, diesel and related products. The impact will be absorbed by the gains made from the strong performance of the Ghana cedis. The Speaker, I repeat, the impact will be absorbed by the gains made from the strong performance of the Ghana cedis. And this will mean that consumers will not have to pay extra for the price of petrol and diesel beginning today. Right, Honorable Speaker, our simulations suggest that there will be no increase in the export price of petrol and diesel in the next window beginning today if the levy is imposed. This is because of a strong Ghana cedi. Right, Honorable Speaker, the levy will serve as a dedicated source of funding to the power sector, and the proceeds will be earmarked for the procurement of essential fuel for power generation.
And I just watched Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, he's the finance minister. And before we went on that break, you saw and heard the public relations officer for the energy ministry really explaining to us what kind of measures the government has put in place to ensure that what the promise by the president that this government is going to clear the energy sector debt by 2026 is fulfilled. And I want to get your immediate thoughts, Mr. Jantua, the kind of measures that Mr. Roxon just gave us, and indeed what you're hearing the finance minister tell us about 1 cedi on the fuel that we'll be buying moving forward.
Beatrice, look, I don't want to compare, but I think just to give an example, I was on the committee that looked at the VRA spillage. When you compare VRA workers to ECG workers, they don't compare.
What does that mean?
The VRA workers were prepared to die to save the dam. They were prepared to die to save the dam because they knew the impact of the dam on the country. They saw the dam as the heart of Ghana, so they would do anything to save the dam. ECG workers do all of them have that kind of mindset? If ECG is going to work, workers in ECG should be prepared to die for ECG. They shouldn't be the ones who go out and suggest to clients that, oh, we can do X, we can do Y, we can reduce your electricity, your houses. They shouldn't do that. They should be prepared to stand firm where ECG is concerned. And I'm not saying all workers of ECG do that, but you have corporates in ECG who do that kind of thing. If you continue to do that kind of thing, what are you doing? You're drawing money out of ECG because people then won't be able to pay the kind of rates and tariffs that they're supposed to pay. So for me, that is key. Now, when you come to the finance minister's suggestion on 1 cedi
on fuel,
that has got to do with the economy. The moment the cedi depreciates, it's going to affect it. So the economy has to be run in such a way that the cedi can stay strong with regards to the other currencies. If that doesn't happen, then we are in for a big challenge. For me, we are between a rock and a hard place. When you look at the debt that Roxanne talked about, 1.7 billion, 2 billion deficit every month, 80 billion
Ghana
cedi deficit, that's about $3 billion. How are we going to pay this? How? Tell me how. And the moment the energy sector comes to a standstill, the country is gone. We cannot afford it. So I reckon that we have to be able to sacrifice. However, it is up to the politicians to use the money judiciously.
Sacrifice, that's what we heard during DDEP.
Well, we say it's a new government. We say they are determined to reduce this by 2026. So if it so happens that they are not transparent and accountable for the monies that will be collected, then it's going to be difficult to reduce this kind of debt. The debt is humongous. No private company would be able to do what? Sustain itself with this kind of debt because it's a government entity. But energy is key. In doing so, we also need to look at the mix, the electricity mix we have in the country, and see how we handle that mix properly. The moment we start bringing down the debt, we have to make sure that we can sustain it by making ECG profitable. I saw the technical team, some of the recommendations
the seven-member committee.
Yes, some of the recommendations they made. And one of the recommendations was that in terms of the revenue side, that should be given out as a concession. And then I think number 2, they talked about other parts of ECG being given out as concessions. Unfortunately, I don't know what it was that brought them to that decision, but I don't think other parts of ECG should be given out as a concession. You know what happened? I think it was somewhere in President Rawlings' time when the IMF suggested that we break up our energy sector. Gridco, ECG, and there's a third one. We break it up and let them stand on their own. What has that created? That has created everybody being a Chenchahini in their own place. And it
working in silos.
Working in silos. And it creates this kind of situation where the cash waterfall mechanism is not working very well, because when ECG collects the money, they don't pay everybody. They keep some, and that isn't fair. So for me, I wouldn't want any kind of break-up in the actual running of ECG. It is how you collect the revenue. That revenue would feed into the cash waterfall mechanism, which will now be able to pay people and other IPPs that have debt to pay.
And
I think it is very, very important that once we get this ship back on keel, we are able to monitor it and monitor it so efficiently that it doesn't affect the ordinary man in terms of electricity.
And indeed, when we come back, Mr. Jantua is talking about the need for us to ensure that we manage this conversation around privatization of the Electricity Company of Ghana very well. And he's also given his view as regards what the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, has proposed. Well, he said that on the floor of Parliament today. When we come back, we'll delve into that. And as to whether or not really what Mr. Roxon told us is convincing enough to the other panelists. Don't go away.
Every morning, I wake up to this miracle sleeping soundly.
On agenda on TV3, my name is Beatrice, and tonight we are looking at revitalizing the power sector. If you're just joining us, well, we also heard from the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, introducing a new levy in Parliament where you will be required to pay 1 Ghana cedi on every litre of fuel that you buy. I do have in the studio with me Dr. Elvis Chumesi. He's Director of Research and Innovation, Africa Sustainable Energy Center. I also do have with us on my right-hand side Mr. Kwame Jantua. He's Chairman, Energy Sector with the Association of Ghana Industries. Of course, we do have our video call with us as well, Richmond Roxon. He speaks for the Energy Ministry. We have Mr. Jabesh Emisatha, who is Managing Partner, Arthur Energy Africa, and of course, Dr. Elik Plim Ametogbo. And on this note, I'm coming to you, Mr. Emisatha. We've actually advanced with the Finance Minister telling us what the government's intention is in terms of the bill to introduce 1 Ghana cedi on every fuel that you buy. And we've also heard Mr. Kwame Jantua as well, giving his own understanding of how we need to be able to handle this privatization conversation of the Electricity Company of Ghana very well. Where do you stand on all of these?
On all of that, I think that it is clear that this debt was not going to go anywhere until we as Ghanaians accepted to pay it off. And I am pleasantly surprised that the Finance Minister has found this creative way of solving the problem, because for how long can we maintain it? So part of the thing is that we as Ghanaians have to accept certain things. That if however we manage the sector, we generate a debt like this, either we will have to pay it ourselves, or our children or our children's children will have to come and pay it. And so next time we are accumulating such debts, we must bear some of this in mind. Then as citizens again, I mean, one of the things is that if we don't get the distribution sector performing efficiently and the rest of the chain performing efficiently, it will come back to bite us. And so it's in our interest to do so. In the case of the distribution sector, I'm saying the distribution sector because it's not just CCG. NEDCO is facing similar, identical problems, if I should say it that way. That we have tried all kinds of things over how many years that ECG has been in existence to try to get this thing working right, and none of it has worked. So you have to try something else to solve those problems so that we can go forward effectively. And that is where I think that we, the citizens, come into the picture. If we insist on doing the same things we have done for 60 years, then probably we'll have the same problem. So I welcome the idea to try something new to try and solve the problem. As an engineer, I'm disappointed that we as engineers, collectively as engineers in Ghana, we have not been able to find a way to run this utility service efficiently such that there's little criticism. We have done so in other areas, but for some unknown reason, we are unable to do that with the distribution business. And we have to just take the bull by the horns and try something new.
But
I was going to say something.
Please go ahead.
I was going to say something else about for all of us to appreciate the unreliability in services that we get. That the saying is that a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Okay, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. There are times when we have had problems with generation, and you can solve the generation problem with the generation efforts. There are transmission problems. You can solve that with transmission problems. And there are distribution problems that you can solve with distribution problems. In addition to that, now we have fuel problems that are at the beginning. And what we have to understand is that you can't solve a fuel supply problem by having more generation plants. And you can't solve a transmission problem by having more generation plants. You can't solve a distribution problem by having more generation plants. So we have to understand that we can't always be talking about where do we have the generation, do we have the generation. We have to talk about where the problem is. You have additional generation to meet generation problems, but that doesn't solve your transmission problems. And so it's a chain from the fuel supply to the power generation, to the transmission, and then to the distribution. And each part of the chain, the weakest part of it will cause the greatest problems. And for now, it seems that the distribution is the weakest part of it.
And let me ask you this question.
And we have to focus on.
Let me ask you this question very briefly before I come to Dr. Elvis Twumasi right here in the studio with us. I'm sure you might have heard the point made by Mr. Jantua as well, that yes, it's good or it may be good, but if we don't sustain the strength of the city, bringing in this one Ghana city levy may be a problem. Dr. Atufosi seems to have given us the idea that we are in the next window, we are not going to see an increase. So, but this levy, if Parliament eventually passes, is going to stay forever. How do you understand that threat, you know, the other side of the argument that Mr. Jantua just made right now?
I think the sustainability of it is important. I mean, there's no way you cannot do this forever, or you cannot be producing electricity and not covering the cost and having somebody else or somewhere else provide the money for you to fix it. The power sector itself has to get to the point where it's self-sustaining. And I think I agree with Jantua on that. And if this is a solution to the debt problem and to the temporary fuel supply issues, but we must bring the power sector itself to the point where it is self-sustaining and it's not depending upon anybody else to provide it money to complete its business. So yes, we have to get to the sustainable point, but this probably buys room for us to improve the service and improve the efficiency such that the power sector is self-sustaining.
I'm coming to you, Dr. Twumasi. Where do you stand on what has been said, particularly the need for us to be careful regarding how we talk about and even implement this conversation around privatization of the Electricity Company of Ghana?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we need a holistic view in solving this problem that we have in Ghana now. And I think we have elaborated some things that the government intends to do to solve the problem within 1 year. This is a huge task because the problem we have now, I would say, is not a 1 year problem, because unless we take some drastic measures, we wouldn't be able to solve this issue. And as we are talking about, I think there have been a lot of views on how the government wants to inject about 200 transformer and try to get to institutions. I believe the idea of moving to houses and demanding the electricity bill is an archaic method that we need to run away from in terms of solving our problem that we have in Ghana.
How should we collect the money?
Yes, myself, I'm an electrical engineer, and we have various ways of dealing with this critical issue that we have in Ghana. But I see engineers being thrown out onto the street to demand money from people when we are having reliability issues that they should be working on the lines and solving our problems for us. I know maybe when it's institutions, yes, maybe we can get to them. But what of the customers? We have about 4.8 million meters in Ghana. About 3 million of them are not in proper condition. Where are the bills going to? There are a lot of issues. People are stealing power. Those are the places we need to tackle now and solve the issue. I think there was an issue that will not reward ECG's inefficiencies with additional taxes and tariffs and all those things. And I believe that we need to tackle the problem from its roots. And that problem is ECG. And that's where we need to look at now, because people are using electricity for free. We have people who are in Ghana here that over 10 years, they've not paid any bill. And we want to, I understand that, the problem that we have now, we have a lot of problems. The first is commercial. We have technical issues. The technical issues will be solved. And I believe it's not just 200 transformers that's going to help us. We have a lot of bottlenecks within the system. I believe that Mr. Atta was actually talking about that. We have a lot of bottlenecks within the system that is not about solving generation issues. One thing that the problem that Ghana has had over the years is we channel our attention to one side. By the time we solve generating issues, all our transmission, there are a lot of bottlenecks on the line that we can't push the power to the people. So the problem we have in Ghana now is that we have generation, but we can't get the power to the people.
So forgive me, the question about how you think we should tackle this privatization conversation, then I'll go to Dr. Elikplim and also Mr. Roxon.
Yes, so I believe that with tackling the privatization issue, I think it's something that we've been talking about over the years, that we need to privatize ECG. And I believe Dr. Atta was actually mentioning that we need a new way. We have tried various ways of trying the problem, solving the problem, but we need a new way. And that new way is for us to privatize ECG. And I don't believe in outright selling of ECG, as maybe the president alludes to, that we want to look at participation of the private sector in the Electricity Company of Ghana. And I don't believe in the idea of just getting people to come and collect money for us. I believe meters, smart meters, are there to collect money for us. It's not, we don't need people to come and collect. We need private sector investment. We need money to invest in the transformers. We need money to invest in the lines so that all those bottlenecks will be dealt with. And I think over the time, I've been suggesting that we should have a system where we have a divided system, where we can divide Ghana into subgroups and privatize the various sections in Ghana. What happens with that is that we can have local content, in the sense that we can have...
And if you could be wrapping up for us...
Exactly.
So
we can have local companies who can take one section. Let's say if it's Greater Accra side, they can take hold of that. If we say that we want to privatize the entire Ghana, what happens is that we are going... I'm not sure we can get any Ghanaian institution that can actually help with that. So I believe that these ways we need to adopt these measures to make sure that we solve the situation that we have now.
And I'm coming to you, Dr. Elikplim. I mean, we heard the finance minister talk there about the new levy. We've also just discussed the privatization, as well as I'm sure you heard the measures that were given us by Mr. Roxon, who speaks for the Energy Ministry. Are these even realistic?
Thank you very much. Let me say I'm equally happy to learn the finance minister proposing raising 1 Ghana cedi from each consumer of fuel to support the power sector. I think that is very creative and innovative. Coming to the issues of solutions to fix the sector, you asked me, I have indicated from the beginning that the sector challenges are multifaceted, and this requires multifaceted solution. I see the sector way behind technology as one of the critical concerns that must be addressed. And this requires serious investment into the sector. And the issue or the concern I have, or the question I would ask is, how do we raise the needed fund to invest in the sector? You have a room to rent out and there is a leakage, you must fix the leakage before you rent out the room. That is my opinion. Privatization or private sector participation is one of the solutions. Come to the issues of technology. How do we address the falling infrastructure? These days we hear of maintenance here and there, we hear of repairs here and there. These are serious concerns. I see it as a major risk. For the past years, I have not seen the needed investments or the needed capital injected into the sector to fix these technical issues.
I'm not sure whether you heard Mr. Roxon. Forgive me for interrupting, but he said that over the last few months, the government has been investing in transformers and even went to the extent of transmission lines so that we're able to cut down on our losses and improve efficiency in terms of the power we get in our homes.
That is a good news. That is a good news. But what I'm saying is that this thing is actually way behind schedule. For the past few years that I mentioned, there has not been any investment in the sector. So at this particular time that we are struggling to raise funds to pay debts, at the same time, we need to raise the equal or the same amount of money to be fixing the technical issues. Remember, we keep talking about commercial and technical losses. How do we address them? These are the questions we should be asking ourselves before we begin to talk about other things. Because if the bucket is leaking, there is no way whatever we raise or as a revenue will be sustained.
And I want to...
How do we put this? We are talking about people still using electricity without paying. Let me say that the government is partly to be blamed for this. You remember the issue of shared meters that are all over the place. Yeah. These meters are not captured in the ECD's database. People are using electricity without paying. It should be a point of concern that, out of priority, ECD has to be supported to roll out prepaid meters to all these people. If not 100% consumers, everyone should be on the prepaid meter.
Okay, Doc, I'm sorry, if you could wrap up for me, because I need to really get your final words and of all the other panel members so we can wrap up, please. If you can wrap up for us.
Let me conclude.
Perhaps I should ask you to add your final word.
Let's address the fundamental issues of ECG and move forward to finding a sustainable solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm coming to you, Mr. Roxon. After that, I'll get 30 seconds final word from each of the panel members. I know you talked about why this one Ghana cedi was equally relevant. And earlier, I was telling you about what the data was showing. And indeed, if you go into it, currently, we're using about 33.1% hydro in terms of electricity, over 60% being thermal. And you admitted to the fact that we're spending a lot of money on this. Looking at this very data we have, is it not more prudent to look at reducing our production cost, so that after we've cleared this legacy debt that the president is determined to clear by 2026, we are not creating another debt because our cost of production is too high? And if you could add your final word as well, Mr. Roxon.
Yes, the goal or the objective long-term wise is to ensure that we maximize efficiency whilst the supply of electricity remains stable. So the question that you asked, that is why the government is putting together the gas processing plant. That will definitely go into reduction of cost of production. That is why the government is looking at the green transition, that's renewable energies, to ensure that we diversify our energy mix If you look at the investments that are being made in solar, just on
If you
Friday,
could wrap up in 30 seconds.
I'll do so. On Friday, the government launched the mini solar grid project with a view of making sure that most of solar is spread across. So yes, we recognize the challenges. The minister recognizes the challenges. Measures have been put in place to ensure from the distribution side, from the transmission side, and the technical losses are reduced drastically while making sure that fiscal discipline is maintained.
And I will come into you very shortly, Mr. Jantua, but let me bring you just a few of your comments. It shall be well says, we are here for Dr. Dr. Eli Klim. Okay, so I'm not able to read the rest of the comments because of time, but thank you so much for sending them in. Please, 30 seconds, Mr. Jantua. What's your final words?
On the AGI, we have 3 companies that assemble meters in this country. And I know from the last government, they weren't importing and nobody's to import. They buy from these 3 companies. The other thing is that ECG now is using technology. In my meter in the office, I have a gadget which monitors how much I use. And once the money finishes, it goes off. That is good. It should be something that should be fast-tracked and used. Now, that bit will also come to rural areas. How do you handle that in the rural? I think technology would be one of the great things to happen. Now, to do with renewables. I think the renewable question, the renewable question should be looked at, where we can move conventional power from residential to business gradually. But that should be policy, and it is something we should be able to do. Well, the 1 CD that the finance minister is talking about, I think is a good thing. Let's see how we monitor it and make it well.
We'll have to end it here. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight. Of course, I've had with us Dr. Elvis Chumesi, Director of Research and Innovation, Africa Sustainable Energy Center, ASEC. Also, Mr. Kwame Jantua, the man you just heard and watched there, Chairman, Energy Sector, AGI, Mr. Jabesh Emisartha, Managing Partner, Arthur Energy Africa. Of course, we've had with us as well Dr. Eli Klim Kwabla Apetobo, CEO, Independent Power Producers, and we've also had with us Richmond Roxin. He speaks for the Energy Ministry. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight. My name is Beatrice, and for those of you who listen to us by 3FM 92.7, thank you as well for joining us. Have a good evening.